Blue Team. Courtney here from the Office of Student Involvement. Thanks for joining us again for our next episode of Get to Know DePaul. Today I'm joined by Greg Moorhead, who is our director in our Center for Students with Disabilities. Greg, thanks so much for joining us.
Glad to be here today.
Yeah, so we kick all these off with a little bit of an introduction. So Greg, how about you take a second, introduce to us who you are and what the Center for Students with Disabilities does.
So again, like Courtney said, my name is Gregory Moorhead. I'm the director for the Center for Students with Disabilities, and I've been here at DePaul now for about 5 years, and we provide accommodations to about 1,200 students. We have offices on both campuses, the Loop campus and the Lincoln Park campus. So if you have a permanent condition or if you have a temporary disability, you want to connect with our office to see how we might be able to support you.
Great. So Greg, I'm curious, can you talk a little bit about what support looks like from the Center for Students with Disabilities for students who might be considering registering?
Sure. So if you think about disabilities, I like to kind of think of them in terms of talking about it with students. I like to talk about it in terms of large buckets. So think of the first bucket as being students with cognitive disabilities, and that can include anything from dyslexia to cognitive central processing disorder. Sorry about that. Could also include other kinds of learning disabilities like attention deficit disorders. So that would be the first bucket. And that tends to be the largest bucket that we have here at the university. And then the second bucket, which is a growing bucket, would be psychological disabilities. And then the third bucket would be students who have physical disabilities. So students who need support because their disability impacts one or more major life activities, they want to contact our office to see what kinds of support we can provide. And support really it can depend on the nature of the academic program and the extent of the functional limitation that the disability imposes on the student. So for some students, not all students, it may look like extra time for exams. It could look like a reduced distraction testing location. It could also include note-taking assistance. It could include captioning services. So those are just some of the more common examples of the kinds of accommodations that students can have from our office.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think an important part for our students to know is, CSD is a great conduit with your faculty members to help ensure that these accommodations are guaranteed no matter what, right? So one of the most important things to do is, if anything that Greg talked about, or really, anything that you've been living with or been experiencing, it's great to go and get registered the first month you're at DePaul, right?
Yes.
Because Greg, I'm curious if you can talk a little bit about what the registration process looks like for our students.
Yeah. So thank you for bringing that up, Courtney, because this is really, really important, because the registration process can be relatively short, or it could be relatively long. And it all depends on the kind of documentation that the student has already. So for instance, if a student has a learning disability in general, and please understand, I'm speaking in very broad terms, in terms of the learning disability, we're usually looking at a psychoeducational evaluation report. That's the kind of documentation that helps us to understand students' functional limitations in an academic setting. And that's usually comprised of a number of tests that have been administered to the student. We like for that kind of evaluation to be no more than 2 to 3 years old, generally speaking, for students who are coming to us as freshmen for the first time. So that's students with the learning types of disabilities. For students who have psychological conditions, we're looking at those students being able to provide their licensed practitioner with a form that we provide them. They fill out the form, they give the form back to our office. That's the same form that we give to students who also have physical disabilities. So we get those documentations, or we get that kind of documentation from students, in addition to the student enrollment form, where the student is able to share a little bit about themselves, talk about the history of accommodations, and talk about specifically the kinds of accommodations they would like to have from DePaul University. So when we get that enrollment form from the student along with the supporting documentation, we review that documentation. But we don't make determinations about accommodation in isolation just based upon paper. So we do the initial review of the documentation, but we invite the student in to include the student in what we call the interactive process, because we want to have a dialogue with the student, because we understand that the documentation is just paper. While it's valuable and it does provide an insight, nothing can supplant or replace the quality or the value that the student can bring to us in person. So we want to be able to talk to the student about their history of accommodations and some of the challenges that they've had and how they've been able to overcome some of the challenges. And so in that setting, that's where we finalize the accommodations. And so we put those accommodations in the system. We help the student to understand how their faculty members can see those accommodations. And we encourage the student to contact our office early and often whenever they have any questions or concerns about their accommodations. But we also tell students at the beginning of each quarter, go to your professor's office hours and talk about your accommodations. Be sure that your faculty members have seen your accommodations, and if they have any questions or any concerns about your accommodations that they can't answer as students, direct them to us.
Yeah. Well, and Greg, I think I hear a couple things about what you're talking about here. One of the things that makes us unique at DePaul is our Vincentian roots and this concept of Vincentian personalism, where we know that we have a lot of students. I mean, we've got over 17,000 that'll be joining us on campus here this fall. But we really do take this individualized approach for each and every one. And one of the ways that, students, if you're planning to register with CSD, that you can help us help you is to do this early and often, right? Or to talk with CSD on a quarterly basis if needed, and do it early in the quarter. One of the things that makes I imagine like the work of campus professionals generally difficult, and those specifically in CSD, is if you come to CSD the week before your finals and say, I have an accommodation I need for my test that's in 5 days, you're going to make it very difficult for CSD to potentially accommodate you. So if you're thinking about it, one of the things that I always say to students, talk to them, and you can always use it if you need it. But if you don't need it, that's okay too. But at least you're registered and those accommodations are ready and waiting for you if you need them.
Courtney, you've summed that up so well, because the whole idea is that students can request accommodations at any time, but the process can be long. And so you have the accommodations when you need them. So I always say to students, if you think that you need accommodations or you've had accommodations in the past at your previous institution, make sure that you get those accommodations when you first come to DePaul. Do that during the summer. If you don't do it during the summer, do it early on during the fall quarter, so you can get those accommodations in place and you can use them as you need them. As Courtney pointed out, you don't have to use your extra time for exams for every class or for every exam in a particular class. That's your prerogative. But you can't use that accommodation if you haven't been approved for it. And that approval process can be long. So you want to start that process sooner rather than later.
Great. So Greg, if people have questions about CSD or want to find out more information, how can they stay connected with the Center for Students with Disabilities?
The best way to contact us is through our email, which is csd@depaul.edu, or to call our office at 312-362-8002.
Great. CSD is also on social media. If you students, if you ever have any questions or you want to connect with them that way, on Twitter and Instagram, you can follow them at CSD DePaul, or you can connect with them at Facebook at facebook.com/CSD DePaul as well. So students, if you're listening in, you probably see in the comments section a check-in link. Make sure you click that or you scan the QR code here so that you can get checked in for your chance to win one of our DePaul University branded tiles. If you're like me and you lose keys, glasses, anything a lot, one of these will be very, very helpful. So make sure you get checked in. We'll be picking winners for our tiles at the end of our Get to Know DePaul series. So whether you're watching live or you're watching the recorded video, make sure you get checked in. But if you have any questions, feel free to post them in the comments. If we don't answer them today during today's session, we will be sure to comment and answer them in the upcoming days, even if you're watching the video on demand. But Greg, as we're rounding out our time together, any advice for our students as they start this fall?
Like we pointed out before, if you feel that you need accommodations, even if you're not certain, or if you've had accommodations in the past, don't wait. I really want to encourage you to contact our office now so you can start that process. There is great support that is available through our office. And I say to students also, accommodations alone won't necessarily help you to be successful. But the great thing about connecting with our office, we're a great resource for connecting you to other resources here on campus. So contact us early, contact us often, I should say. So it's never too late to contact our office. But I would caution you and let you know that sometimes the process of putting accommodations in place can be sometimes lengthy, but we'll certainly work with you to be sure that you have the support that you need.
Great. Well, Greg, thanks so much for taking the time to join us today. Students, as you probably know, this series is part of Welcome Week. So Get to Know DePaul is happening each and every day throughout Welcome Week. But if you want to see the full schedule of events, you can go to welcomeweek.depaul.edu. Tonight on campus, we've got bumper cars, one of our fan favorite activity from our students, happening from 6 to 10 in the Lincoln Park Student Center. But if you go to welcomeweek.depaul.edu, you can see the whole schedule, including info on Blue Demon Welcome, First Friday Fun. We're putting roller rink and bowling alley in 120, and all the activities and everything we have planned. But as always, if you ever have any questions or if you need anything else from anyone in the Division of Student Affairs, CSD, OSI, feel free to let us know. But until next time, we hope you stay safe. Bye-bye, Blue Demons.